Welcome back to Season 5 of Time to Change. I'm Chasen Forehand.
And I'm Dom Jones. We have some amazing conversations lined up from people doing the work. I'm excited for those and the change that it'll hopefully spark.
I can't wait to jump in. So let's get started. Hello and welcome back to Time to Change. I'm Chasen Forehand.
And I'm Dom Jones.
And you are lucky today to be with us and Michelle Strasburger in the house. She is the CEO of the Wellness Value. She's also the founder of HR Rebels, which I'm a proud member of. How do leaders start to build trust? I want to build trust. How do I start to build trust within an organization?
I think that's a great question. And I think it's very individualized. And so a lot of it starts with being authentic, asking for feedback, and how you react when you get feedback is really important. If you ask for feedback and say, I'm open to feedback, and then you attack them or give excuses when they give you feedback, they're never going to do it again, right? But if you just say thank you, I think we have to learn just to say thank you. When people give us feedback and leave it at that. You might not agree with it. You might not like it. There might be other reasons behind it. Just say thank you. Because the more you do that, then the more they'll say, okay, that wasn't so scary, right? Giving feedback to your leader is frightening, positive or negative. It's frightening.
Yeah.
And so if you want to build trust, you gotta be open to it and not just say, I have an open door policy.
Yeah, open door policy. That's scary in itself. What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you. It is individualized. But I think, I love how you stated that, though, that we can start to have a framework and let it begin with listening, asking questions and listening, and then not attacking people back. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories, and I don't know, I might be repeating myself, Chasen, if I've said this before, but one of my favorite stories on a leader building trust was there was a leader once, and I don't know where the story came from, so I'm sorry I can't give somebody credit, but there was a leader trying to build trust. He was a CEO and a bit of a tyrant, but he wasn't aware, not self-aware, right? Sometimes we do things and we're not always aware on how it's perceived. And so they did a 360. He got the results of the 360 and he was shocked. And he went to his team and he said, I want to change. Thank you for sharing this and feedback with me. I want to change. And he gave everybody the clickers. You know the clickers they use for dog training?
Yeah.
Clickers?
Yeah.
The old school clickers. He gave everybody. Yeah, it's great. He gave everybody a clicker. And he said, if you see me doing this behavior, because again, sometimes we're not aware, right? So he said, if you see me doing this behavior, hit the clicker. I don't have to see you click it. I just have to hear it. So you can click it and run. You can hide under your desk and click it. You can click it behind a closed door, however you want to do it. And it made him much more, it seems silly, but it made him much more self-aware. Wow. And employees felt like, wow, he heard us. And we were able to help him change and make it a great environment.
I love that. And at the same time, I almost feel like there's an office version coming up where the person just keeps coming up behind them and click.
Whatever it takes.
Oh my God. Whatever it takes, right?
My mind immediately went to how I can apply that at home some kind of way with the clicker. Like I came up with about 3 scenarios, but that's for another episode.
Oh,
totally fine.
Wow. Oh, for another episode. Goodness.
For another episode.
If you figure that one out, Dom, I want to know.
I would love, Michelle, just on the topic of trust. You obviously, with your background, you've been exposed to a lot of different work cultures and environments. On the topic of trust, what are some of the key markers that we should look for that indicates we are in or an environment is a high trust environment?
People tell you something's broken and they can walk right into the CEO and say, this is not working or customers are upset. I think that's a key thing. If there's no level of trust, employees will not tell you when something's broken. Yeah. Right. And that could be a system process. Somebody's doing something wrong. That feedback doesn't get shared. I also think go ahead, Chasen.
No, I was just going to say, they just keep letting it go. like it's their problem, they'll fix it.
Yep, exactly. Right. I think also when you hear leaders talking about, I'm going to use this word loosely, but frivolous things, right? Like how many PTO days somebody's taking off, or how they might not be always at their desk, or whatever. Let's go all the way out there and say return to office, those types of things. I think that shows a lack of trust in leadership when they're not focused on the results and the performance of the person. Like you could have somebody who, works Monday through Thursday and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday goes skiing, right? And they perform and they get their stuff done so they can take that extra day off and they come back recharged. Like, why wouldn't you want that employee? Why are you worried about the Friday they're taking off when they're meeting their numbers and they're meeting performance metrics?
Yeah, that's fair. So I heard transparency in there, being able to focus on the more critical things, the things that matter versus the surface frivolous things that's commonplace to see workplaces focus on today. You do a lot of work in the area of wellness. Um, and we hear a lot about these terms like psychological safety and the impact of workplaces on well-being. I'm curious, have you seen any tie-in to whether or not an environment having high trust or low level of trust and how that impacts individuals' overall wellness in an organization?
I don't have anything I can point to as far as data, but my gut tells me that if you have somebody you trust and you can share that feedback without fear of retribution, retaliation, or lashing out, then
Yeah.
your stress level is going to be less,
Mm.
right? If you're able to say, and we've talked about this, Chasen, on the Rebels call, that in the future, the workforce of the future, we're going to have employees say, I'm sorry, this work is no longer psychologically safe for me, right? And
Mm.
that means the workload you're putting on them is creating a psychological burden, which is stress, probably anxiety, a lot of other things. And so, we need to be prepared for that one. But I think it's great that we're going to have employees that can voice that concern and say, this is no longer psychologically safe, because what we're seeing with organizations is they're cutting back, and they've been doing that for a few years, and the people that stay get more and more work,
Mm.
right? And a lot of times it's your top performers because they do a good job, so you just keep giving
Yeah.
them more work.
Yeah.
And at what point are you breaking them down? And then they're no longer effective.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair. That's fair.
There are
Yeah.
studies that show that on the PHQ-9 questionnaire, which looks at mental health and depression. For every increase in depression, there's a greater decrease in productivity.
Hmm.
So
Makes sense.
I don't know if you can tie that. You could probably loosely tie that to trust, right? Because if you feel like you're trusted and you have trust and you trust your leaders, right, it makes it a little bit easier to communicate, to understand. You don't have to
Yeah.
worry about what their intentions were and all of those things.
Yeah. There's space to have very uncomfortable conversations around your workload or what's impacting how you show up at work.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense. I appreciate you pointing that out.
Well, anytime you feel like you can have a courageous conversation with your leader, I feel like that, whatever the topic may be, I feel like that right there is a good sign that you're heading in the right direction, at least. If I don't feel like I can have a courageous conversation about anything because I don't know how they may react, absolutely. And I know we kind of keep saying it roughly around in the same circles, but when we're building trust, I would think that the first key metrics in that are how people start to respond to leadership at all levels. Are they coming and talking to people? Are they being open? Are they being honest? Are they bringing challenges, having courageous conversations?
Mm.
And where I keep seeing, there's a breakdown from middle level management and up, and there's a breakdown from middle level management and down from a standpoint of if you have a larger organization where middle managers that have gotten there for however reason, a lot of times by the fact that they have tenure or that they've ridden these waves of anxiety and trauma and workload to become leaders in some way, but they never had the safety between themselves and upper management so they don't even know how to give that to people in other levels. And that kind of brings me to my question is, if you were a leader, Michelle, if you were brought in, you do a lot of work in the fractional space, but also HR, etc. What if you were brought in to analyze a company that really wants to they're committed to making changes. They're committed, like that leader you told the story about in the clicker, which I love. I'm gonna remember that forever now. But how would you start to take a look and talk to the team and figure out like where we need to go? Like, how if you're someone coming in the middle, do you assess everything and then come up with a playbook for someone who really wants to make good, positive changes?
That's a great question. We can do engagement surveys, but we also talk to employees, right? Your frontline workers know where all the challenges are, and they will tell you. And it's interesting because there was this article that was done, or a study that was done, I think it was by Manpower, and it was called The Engagement Illusion. And similar to what you were saying, Jason, is that the closer you get to like the executive level, like the leadership and above, the more engaged they are because you know why all those decisions are being made. The further away you get from that, the less engaged you are because you don't know why. And so you figure out, what are the challenges and then try to dig in. Why are they happening? I worked with a company recently and they were having a similar thing. And we found out in this process that there's not a lot of transparency. The employees felt like there was no transparency. And the leaders go, we talk to them every day. How is there no transparency? We tell them what's going on, but are you telling them the why? Right? Are you sharing why you made that decision? Do they understand why your strategy is to grow this many times? Do they know why your strategy is to pull back now on spending so that you can have a longer runway? What's the reason? You can't just say, I'm sorry, Sally's no longer here, and say that's communication, right? You really got to dig in and open up the shades. Yeah. And tell people, because when you're in the room and you're making those decisions, you get it. You're like, okay, this is, I know why we're making the decision. But then once you leave that room, nobody's sharing that information.
This reminds me of that old school thing that, your parents this may just be a generational thing. So because of my age, and my parents, or my father in particular, saying to me, because I told you so. Why do you need to do that? Because I said so. That is not a good excuse, Dad. That's not, and that's, you're so right. Like, why? A lot of people want to know why. Yeah. They want to know why Sally's gone. They want to know why Bob's not there anymore. They want to know what's happening with the company and why are we making the decisions? Why are we moving in a different direction? Why are we changing? Why are we having to do what we're doing? The more you are transparent, I believe, you're building trust. You're absolutely telling people, hey, we want to be, present and authentic and trustworthy. And we're going to say, hey, we goofed. Here's what's happening. Here's what we're doing to try to fix it. And including, I over and over again, I keep seeing companies where they're not including all of the people when they start to make really tough decisions. They make the decision and then they do exactly what you said. Here's what we've done, and suck it up. This is, I hope you like it, but this is what we've decided to do. Why not pour into the people in such a way where you're actually taking feedback. They're on the front lines. They're doing a lot of this work for you and representing you, depending on the size of your company, you know, representing you to hundreds, thousands of people, and how many communities. Why not make them part of what you're talking about? So now they are part owners in the decision-making process. I like that model. I actually love that model a lot, where their employees are part of the leadership group by just de facto. You know, it's an employee owner-led company.
Mm-hmm.
I really thought we would actually see more and more and more of that as we were heading into this space. And it almost kind of got to a place where it just stopped. You know, I don't see it as much as I would love to see that, but I think it's a great model.
I've done some work for teal companies, teal organizations, and it's really interesting to see a lot of that because it takes away some of the, the misunderstanding, misinformation. I've always told, or not always, but one of the things I've leaned on is if you don't tell them a story, they make up their own. Right. And I'm not saying you tell them a lie, but if you don't tell them what's going on, they're going to make up their own story. So you let, Susie's no longer here. Her cube's empty. Maybe I'm next. That's the story they have.
Yeah. It's not a good place to be in, but Dom, any last questions?
No last questions. But a thank you, Michelle, just in hearing about what it is that you do in this conversation, knowing how important high trust is to healthy organizations. I appreciate the work that you do, and excited for the change that this conversation will hopefully help spark.
Very cool. We have been talking to Michelle Strasburger. She is the CEO of the Wellness Value. She's also the leader of the HR Rebels, and you have been on Time to Change. I'm Chasen Forehand.
And I'm Dom Jones.
And we'll catch you next time.